Welcome. We had a little bit of a hiccup, just technical matters, but the good news is I think that everything that could go wrong went wrong, so now it's all should be improving. That's usually what happens. Welcome to our conference, Rethinking Autism for the 21st Century. This is a little bit of a very diverse gathering. We have 800 people sign up for the conference. People are going to be coming maybe a little bit later. There are people online waiting. And we're very happy to have a very diverse crowd with different opinions on autism and different views that we're hoping to make all shared and make this like a big brainstorming event that get us together to improve autism for the immediate future. And although we as a New Jersey Autism Center of Excellence, a state center, don't endorse any particular view or reject any particular view, what we're here to do is to gather everybody's thoughts and move forward and hopefully leave the conference with a general consensus that we need to press the restart button and preserve what was good up to now, the positive that was built up to now, that whatever was done when we could with what we had at the time, but that now we can improve because there's been at least 2 decades of science and technology that has brought us to a different point. So I want to first and foremost thank my team and the people that put this conference together behind the scenes. They are our graduate students, our assistants, and our previous manager of the center. They contributed tremendously to this. And I think that they follow this notion, this model of working for others and to improve the life of others. And I think this is what science and scientists in our group and across the world are trying to do for autism. I want to tell you a little bit about our origins. We're funded originally by the National Science Foundation. The National Science Foundation funds primarily computational and mathematical theoretical models, not necessarily clinical work. And we were the first lab that was funded under a risky idea in the National Science Foundation at the time. In 2009, we were the only people that were talking about movement sensations in autism and the importance to address these matters. And we are proud because the National Science Foundation funded the first American Sign Language, and this is part of our agenda. What we want to do in the future is create a communication code that embraces everybody, including people that have challenges with speaking, with co-articulating those muscles that utter sounds and processing the sound and so forth. They gave us the internet, the Google, they gave us the smartphones, they gave us the technology that flew you here from far away safely and sound, and they gave us the technology that keeps bridges standing. They gave us the technology that advances humanity, and that's the people that entrusted us with this research program. And it was funded as a theoretical sensory motor integration framework to study social interactions in autism in 2009. That's 14 years ago. And today, we are proud that we're here gathering and we have a following crowd on the movement perspective and the movement-sensitive perspective of autism. I will play a video that we put together back then that we submitted at the National Science Foundation for our grant, and that reflects the view at the time. Oh, it's not sound. So essentially, in this view, what we're trying to do is get the sensations of the body, get the idea that these children cannot feel their body properly. There are differences in the way they have developed, but what we did is we leveraged the movements, and we used the movements as a filter to dampen the noise and the randomness that we found they had in their bodies. And we then, let me advance it, but essentially created a new framework that utilizes sensory information that comes from the external environment, integrates that with the internal code, the motor code, and much like when people echolocate and figure out how the sound bounces against the wall and returns back as a form of feedback, we use that model to get awareness in these kids of the environment. So by their own movements, they would trigger sensory information that leverage their movements and began to be a tool, was actually a tool to be, and so this is one example. We inserted in the environment where the child was agreed positions that they were not aware of, but they were able to test it, and with the sensor that they were wearing in their hand, they triggered these movies that they could see themselves, or they could see a video of their liking and sound and so forth. And so they were able to control it and acquire autonomy that they didn't have before. They dampened this process dampened the noise and the randomness in their motor code and enabled them to be in control. So that was back in 2009, and in 15 years later, we've had three major revolutions that has happened. One is the genomics revolution that has gotten a lot of funding in autism. Another one is the neuroscience revolution, which came about with the Decade of the Brain and then with the Brain Initiative, and it has advanced in the last couple of decades, has accelerated our knowledge of how mechanistically the brain works and the peripheral nervous system works together with the brain. And it has given us the ability to better understand the neurophysiology and neuroanatomy of the nervous system. And now the third revolution which has been underutilized in autism is the wearable biosensors revolution that has been adopted by other fields and has created a slew of therapies and measures, outcome measures of therapeutic interventions in other fields that we could leverage in autism. And there are sensors that are FDA approved already, that are prescribable by physicians, and that are used also in the laboratory settings. And one advantage that these biosensors give us is that it's a direct readout of the nervous system, of the biorhythms of the nervous system, which we found to be very special in autism, very different. There were significant delays in the neonatal stage in the brainstem processing sound, and that persists for years until the diagnosis is received about 4.5 years later after birth. So we are wasting precious time because the system, what happens is it's got about, on average, 2 millisecond delays in a system that processes at microsecond time scale. So everything is misaligned, and there is also a reduced bandwidth of the responses, reflecting a reduced bandwidth of the frequency processing in the sound that travels throughout the auditory nerve to the primary auditory cortex, and that persists for years. We tested in neonates, we tested in toddlers, we tested in children of early school age. So if nothing is done about it, it's not going to improve on its own, and it's a fundamental piece in the communication, in the social interactions, and the integration of all sensory inputs with the rest of the body, because the brainstem is a conduit to the neocortex, to the subcortical areas, to the spinal cord, and to the body in general, so the cerebellum, so we need to pay attention to that. We also leverage those studies with the New York State Institute of Basic Research with Dr. Fan and Dr. Eric London, and they had videos that we could process with simple means, and this then became a project that we launched where a simple cell phone, weekly, the parents can send us 3-minute videos, and we track the motor milestones, which are very well defined in the clinical world. So we can identify problems very early, differences, and coping mechanisms that we can leverage to help the child grow and create support and accommodations in the school, at the school system. So this brought us to a very different model that we can now leverage, and is the scalable model that affords high precision, is affordable because everybody, pretty much, most people carry a cell phone or an iPad. Schools have iPads, and so they enable us to create a personalized, more inclusive science, affordable by everybody, who could then send the data to the cloud that we can then analyze in our labs. And it's a different model than just having a few people come to the lab, which is very non-inclusive, because it's usually the people that can afford to drive and are aware of science and can go. This opens this up for everybody. And with that, we created the precision autism paradigm, borrowing from the precision medicine model, which is a model in medicine that launched a completely different platform to integrate knowledge from different layers of the knowledge network. But in cancer research, which was the area that created this paradigm, they don't have the natural behaviors that we study in the clinical domain in clinical areas. And so there was a disconnect between, in the case of autism, between all the behavioral markers that clinicians observationally provide and the genomics data that grew at an accelerated pace in autism, and it's mostly what we have right now. So that gap we could close with the biosensors and the new algorithms, the new AI, the new machine learning techniques that the STEM field created. And this is the field of science, technology, engineering, and math that is severely underutilized in autism and underfunded. And so part of my talk here is to call for a change in that, because then we can really personalize the outcome measures that we need, that are objective and quantitative, and that are a neutral observer in any kind of operation that we carry on in autism. My talk is a call on action for the legislators, for people to reach out to the legislators and fund STEM research that will bring the technology and the science that we already have and that we are already utilizing in other fields to the field of autism, and to support multidisciplinary research that embodies these technical advances and that has a peer review system that includes STEM people in it, because this is the science that fly airplanes, keep bridges on, give you the internet, give you the cell phone. It's the technology that has moved humanity to the next frontier, and we should continue to fund and to introduce this technology in autism. And it's the technology that is open access, is reproducible, and that it welcomes criticism, because that is science and that is progress. And be aware and avoid monolithic approaches, one-size-fits-all model approaches, and approaches that don't accept criticism, because when you see that, that is not scientific. Science really is accepting criticisms to move forward, recognizing the errors to move forward and to improve. And with that, I have come across a lot of barriers in autism, although I'm a researcher from another area, and an applied mathematician and a researcher in Parkinson's and schizophrenia and so forth. I want you to invite you to think about what it is that we are missing, because if we don't recognize this ourselves, we will be in trouble for the next decade or so. So think about that. A little bit of altruism will be important, and contact your legislators and advocate for STEM and for to help us build a collaborative model, and to help us embrace your child and the future of that child as an active member of society. Only bringing awareness in society about the problems that we have in autism, the neuroanatomy, the neurophysiology of the system, how these children are in pain, how they need support, how they need accommodations, and how they need a communication system that leverages their bodies in motion is the only way forward.
Over the years, experience has taught us that we must be constantly aware of people's attempts to discriminate against us. We must be prepared at every moment to fight this discrimination. The average American is not, nor should they have to be prepared to fight every day of their life for basic civil rights. All too many incidences of discrimination have gone by undefended because of lack of protection under the law.
Hello. It's great to be with you. So I've spent my entire life fighting for disability rights. And I can tell you that the challenges that I face are the same challenges that disabled people face around the world. It shouldn't be a big deal that I am here on this stage, coming up a ramp, having a sign language interpreter who I can't see but I know is out there, and being, as the introduction said, a disabled woman, wheelchair rider, who had polio from Brooklyn and can in fact be a diplomat. But that's not the way it's always been. So let me please take you back in time. Disabled in Action decided to have a demonstration in New York City in front of Nixon headquarters.
We decided that we were going to sit down in the street, we were going to stop traffic. So at 4:30 in the afternoon, we formed this huge circle. We cut off 4 streets.
You get the call to action, to the barricades. You know, Judy would call it. I remember being on the ground with these big trucks coming at you, going, whoa.
In Autism Land.
I want people to understand that not speaking is not the same as not thinking.
Although it can be a problem, I wouldn't swap my autism for anything. It makes me who I am. I just wouldn't be the same without it.
And what was usually done with kids like me in the 50s was just put us in an institution. Today, things are so much better. There's just no comparison.
We, you in this room, together, we can make a difference. Together, we can speak up for justice. Together, we can help change the world.
It's by an autistic researcher named Rua Williams. I've quoted this in one other webinar, but I think it's such an important perspective. So they say, the locus of pathology exists not in the autistic person, but in the interaction between a hostile environment and the subjugated autistic. It is essential for parents, practitioners, educators, and autistic people themselves to ask the crucial question: is the autistic a machine or an organism? Are we active agents in our own embodied experience, or are we a locus of behavior? It is not with defiance, but autonomy that I declare as an autistic person, I am not a manifestation of stimuli and response. I am agential. I am autonomously autistic.